Me back. First thing I want to say is, may I have this dance with you? Last time I was here at the grand opening, it was wonderful. So I was so thrilled to come back. When Larry said, please come back, I was thrilled to come back. Today, I would like to talk about, the title of my talk is From Bondage to Liberation. So why is it that so many human beings nowadays are unhappy, are like prisoners to their own minds? And how is it that some humans are truly free, have true happiness? We're going to talk about what ancient wisdom says about this. I'm going to talk about what neuroscience says. And I'm going to share two simple techniques that anyone can practice. Even a small child can practice these two simple techniques to generate incredible happiness and joy. First, I want to ask, how many can think back at a time when their minds had them experiencing a lot of pain and suffering? And then when you look back, you think, oh, that was not necessary. Has anybody had an experience like that, or am I the only one? I've had that experience a lot. In fact, it reminds me of a quote by Mark Twain, who says, I'm a very old man, and in my life I've had a great many misfortunes, most of which never happened. That's what our mind does. And I'm going to share a story. Maybe some of you have heard this story before. It's an ancient story about two travelers. They were leaving their small village and going to a new village. The first traveler was practicing the 5 unity principles. So he had some peace and contentment. And when he went to the next village, there was a wise gatekeeper at the village. And the traveler said, how are the people in this village? And the wise gatekeeper said, well, how are the people from where you're coming? The first traveler said, well, they were great people. They were fun. They were compassionate. I'm going to miss them tremendously. And the wise gatekeeper said, you're welcome in this village. That's exactly the type of people you'll find here. Second traveler, shortly thereafter, was really agitated. He was stressed out, had a lot of lethargy in his mind, very negative person. Came to the wise gatekeeper and said, I want to relocate here. Wise gatekeeper asked him the same question. How are the people from your village? He said, they're mean, they're cruel, they're hypercritical, egocentric. I can't wait to leave them. The wise gatekeeper said, that's exactly the people in this village. You are not welcome here. Then he said, well, I understand my friend came and got in. Why can't I get in? He said, there are many forms of prison. You seem to carry your prison wherever you go. Think about that for a moment. Humans, through stress, anxiety, agitation, we form our own mental prison and we carry it with us wherever we go. So today I'm going to share what ancient wisdom and what neuroscience has to say. And ancient scripture in the Gita, chapter 6, verse 6, the Gita says, the mind is the enemy for those who cannot control it. And all the ancient scriptures say pretty much the same thing in different words. Proverbs 23:7 says, you are what you think. So as a doctor, I tell my patients, you are what you eat. We know what you eat, goes into your body, goes into your cells. But really, we also are what you think. And I'm going to share with you how this happens, what the science has to say about how our thinking manifests in our body. But my favorite quote comes from the Upanishads, where it says, indeed, the mind of man or woman can lead to bondage or liberation. So it's our choice whether we want to be in bondage or liberation. In the ancient Hindu philosophy, many of you have heard of the 3 gunas. There are 3 qualities in nature. So if we look around in nature, we see these qualities, and they're reflected in our minds. These 3 qualities are Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, which basically is agitation or restlessness. We see that all around us. Or there's inertia, there's dullness, lethargy. Or there's lucidity, clarity, peace and contentment. So in our minds, on a regular daily basis, we want to promote sattva, which is a lucid cognition. We want to have clear cognition. We don't want to have dullness or agitation. And we can think about many, many things that can cause dullness and agitation in the human mind. Too much alcohol, too many drugs, stale processed foods. And the Gita talks about this, that the foods we eat directly impacts our mind. We want to eat the foods that promote sattva, which is clarity of intellect. And when we do this, when we have a clear cognition, sattva, we're promoting more happiness, promoting more satisfaction in our lives. And happiness researchers have discovered that we can rate happiness on a 10-point scale. So I want you to think about this for a moment in your life. If you look back on your life, how happy are you in general? If you're a 10, which means you're completely satisfied with your life in general. And a 1 is you have dissatisfaction. You haven't been too happy. Now, all of us on a daily basis, we fluctuate between a 1, dissatisfaction, and a 10, complete satisfaction. But in general, we want to promote, who wants to have a 10 and be completely satisfied, completely content, have serenity and peace and happiness? Raise your hand if you want to have experience a 10 most of the time. Like all of us, most of us want to have a 10. And I like to share this example. When we look at small children, 3, 4, 5 years of age, 6 years of age, maybe 7, 6? 7, okay, see. Most of the time, they're a 10, completely satisfied, at peace, and happy in any situation in life. Now, the question that arises, why are so many human beings that we see nowadays experiencing so much unnecessary pain and suffering? And the answer that I'd like to share with you is it lies in the evolutionary biology. It's not our fault. It's because our brains have been programmed to create pain and suffering. And it's not even our fault. But when we know this, when we have insight into this, then we can do some simple techniques that will address it. And the first reason is called the negativity bias that's in the human brain. And that negativity bias allowed us to survive in the jungle. I'll give you an example. Thousands of years ago when we were in the jungle, we sampled 20 different herbs, but one was bitter and made us sick and almost killed us. We had nausea, vomiting. Which herb do you think we're going to remember for the rest of our lives? We're going to have a photographic memory for that. It's the one that almost killed us. That's the negativity bias. Well, in today's society, it stresses us out. We get a mean email, or somebody says something that you don't like, or somebody cuts you off, and that negativity bias is activated, and it stresses us out. We may get a great review by our boss. Get 20 awesome things you're doing, but there was one thing you can work on. What do you think is going to keep us up at night? That one thing that the boss said we should work on. Now, the other component of our brain that keeps us really stressed out is the default mode network. And the default mode network of the brain is also known as mind wandering. So researchers have shown that most of the time, your brain has been designed to think about the past and the future. Hopefully right now you're not thinking about the past or the future. You're focusing on what I'm saying. And this allowed us to survive in the jungle as well. So if we saw in the savannah, in the plains, in the tall grass, there was a saber-toothed cat there that killed one of our family members, we would remember that and we would avoid the tall grass because there could be a stalking saber-toothed cat. But now what happens in today's society? We ruminate we're ruminating about the past and creating more pain, and then we're fantasizing about the future and thinking about all the things that could happen. Then when we look back, it never happened. So all this stresses us out and creates pretty much disease in our body. So I've shared with you the two brain centers, the negativity bias and the default mode network, that creates a lot of stress unnecessarily in today's society. And I've shared with you an example how children are at peace and happy, and that's where we want to get to. But I want to share another example of what complete fulfillment and complete satisfaction and happiness looks like. It's good to get an example. What does that look like when you have complete satisfaction? And there's a wonderful example of this that we see it all the time. But I want to share this with you. And this is what sattva, serenity, contentment looks like. If you can sit quietly after difficult news, as if in financial downturns you remain perfectly calm. If you can see your neighbors travel to fantastic places without a twinge of jealousy. If you can happily eat whatever's put on your plate. If you can fall asleep after a day of running around without a drink or a pill. If you can always find contentment just where you are probably a dog. Now that's a Dharma quote coming from Jack Kornfield, but it highlights a good example that man's best friend, our companion animals, that's another example of living on that 10 on the happiness scale. Complete satisfaction. And so children are also there. And then adults throughout our lives, because of the stressors that we face, we're fluctuating. And we're experiencing more agitation, we're experiencing more donas, inertia, which is the rajasic, tamasic guna that I discussed earlier. But the key is to have more and more serenity, more sattva, more contentment. And we promote this through the unity principles. Now, I want to briefly discuss also what happens when we are under the influence of the rajasic and tamasic guna, the agitation, the restlessness, and the inertia and the dullness of cognition. When we're under that influence, we are having stress in our body, whether it's conscious or subconscious. I have a lot of patients that I say, are you under a lot of stress? And they say, no stress. I say, you sure? No stress, wow. And then when you start talking, they don't have good sleep patterns, so they're getting very little sleep. That's a big stressor on the body, but it's more of a subconscious stress. And then you get talking, there's other factors that stress human beings out without them even consciously knowing about it. And what happens with this chronic, uncontrolled stress, it's affecting every single organ in our body. It's affecting our brains, causing anxiety, depression. I even had one case where the young 29-year-old patient had a form of dementia. She was forgetful of almost everything. And then the specialist said, stress is causing this memory loss. I've had patients who had heart failure from stress. You can get GI, you can get IBS, you can get dermatitis, you can get acid reflux. You can get a lot of different manifestations of stress on the physical body. And your mind as well. And you can get the release of all kinds of hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, you get more inflammation. So when we're doing with this practice is we are decreasing the stress in our body. This next example that I would like to share is the most crucial, pivotal concept I want to share with you. We have two cycles. One is, I've discussed, is the bondage, where we're basically trapped as slaves to our emotions and our thoughts. And the other cycle is we're free, truly free, and we're In other words, we're masters of our thoughts and our emotions. So the first example, we have a stimulus, and then there's no space to choose. So it's almost like two fists bump into each other, and then there's a reaction. It's almost like a reflex. It's a robotic response. It's reactionary. And under this cycle, a lot of times there's regret, because it happens so quickly without thought, without conscious thought. Raise your hand if you would like to have ever been under the influence of this first cycle where there was a stimulus in your life and there was a reaction, and you thought, how can I have done that? Okay, maybe some of you don't want to raise your hand. That's fine. I understand. But I can almost guarantee you this. At some point or other, most of us have felt this robotic, automatic response. And it can happen in so many different ways. Some that are subtle, like we may be hungry, for example, and that's the stimulus. And then immediately we eat maybe some unhealthy food. That was a quick response, a quick reaction without thinking. And we think back, well, why did I eat that unhealthy food? That's an example. Another example could be traffic. A lot of people know about the traffic jams and accidents, and somebody cuts you off, and somebody flashes you a birdie, and then you flash them the birdie back. Nobody in Unity will do that. We're not gonna. In Unity, we don't do that. But we know a lot of people do that. Well, now let's think about the other example. If we have the same stimulus, this is the cycle of freedom. So somebody cuts you off, and then they get so angry, they flash you the birdie. And you have this spaciousness to choose your response. And your response is, it's a peaceful response, and you say, while they're flashing you the birdie, you say, thank you for telling me I'm your number one. And you don't respond. They may have been having a bad day. Their dog may be sick. Their mom may be sick. So we have a response which is compassionate. It's intentional. And the example I like to give also is we have the stimulus of hunger. And me as a doctor, I'm at different conferences, and there may not be healthy food, because it's still the big pharma's involved, and there's a lot of food that's just not healthy. And I may be hungry, and I say, my response is, I drink water, I fast. So I may skip a meal. So that's another example. The examples are endless of this stimulus reaction, which is robotic, and then the stimulus conscious response of something that's nurturing and good for you. And this is where we find true freedom. When under the influence, when we talk about bondage, in summary, we talked about the negativity bias and the wandering mind. Really, what's happening there is a self-sabotage. When we're under that influence of stress, we are self-sabotaging ourselves. We're not being compassionate to ourselves. In conclusion, the ideas that I shared with you today to create true freedom, true liberation or release, true happiness. What we do is we transform grievances. Because under the first cycle that I shared with you, there's a lot of grievances, negativity, and there's a lot of creating stories. And what we're trying to do is transform grievances into gratitude. And this is why in Unity, the gratitude practice is so pivotal, so important. And I want to share with you the latest research on the gratitude practice. It takes 2 minutes to do. I've been doing it regularly after reading the research, and it's very profound. So the 2-minute gratitude practice is as follows. Think back over the past 24 hours on 3 things that you're grateful for. Now, a lot of people make the mistake and say, I'm grateful for my health, my family, and my job, and keep repeating that every day. And you know how much benefit that gives you? None. That's the tamasic guna, that's inertia. You're not reaping the benefits. the research shows you have to pick 3 new things every day, and you have to be specific. So for example, I would say, I'm thankful I have healthy lungs that allowed me to run this morning. And I'm thankful my wife is my business partner, and she verified insurances for me to get us paid. And I'm grateful for my kids who gave me a hug yesterday. So those 3 specific things, and then every day you pick 3 new things, and you have a dramatic improvement in your health and happiness. That's the first practice of transforming grievances into gratitude, which engenders contentment, peace, and serenity in all levels, in our minds and in our body. The next simple practice, the one that, remember we talked about the drunken monkey mind. That's in Eastern tradition, talk about the drunken monkey mind, and then shamanic tradition, they talk about 1,000 voices speaking in your head at the same time. That creates agitation and restlessness. How to combat that wandering mind? Very simple practice. It's present moment awareness. Very simple. Kids do it naturally, our companion animals do it naturally, and now I would like to share with you my favorite practice of present moment awareness. So everybody take one deep breath in and out. Now as you take a deep breath in, you say silently to yourself, I have arrived. And deep breath out, I am home. Let's do it again. Deep breath in. I have arrived. Deep breath out. I am home. One more time. I have arrived. I am home. This simple practice, when you take a deep breath in, you say, I have arrived. And when you take a deep breath out, you silently say to yourself, I am home. You can do this anywhere that you are. And the truth is, when we think about what's our true home address, a lot of people will think about their physical address, their zip code 97405. But what is your true home address? And that's in the present moment. The present moment is our true home address. And happiness is only found in one place. Anybody want to take a guess on where that one place is?
No.
The present moment. And a lot of people are searching for that Shangri-La perfection in the future. Guess where perfection lies? Present moment. So today, I share with you some principles of how to go from bondage to liberation. How to be a master of our thoughts and our emotions. And it's not hard. It's just looking at our companion animals and then looking at our children who are living it every day, and we can do the same. Thank you for having me again.